Greetings, Lao-Shi Lawrence McElroy here for Water Tiger School of Taijiquan. A couple of things. One, a little bit different look, a little bit different setup, just out of necessity from some winter session cleaning in this space, and also trying out some new tech. We first tried to shoot this particular video back on December 13th, and December 13th was a Friday, and it wasn't very lucky for us. As you may have now noticed from the new announcements playlist, we did 3 shoots, all of them involved in the tech crashing. So this is our first attempt at trying just a little bit different tech. We haven't been able to actually, do diagnostics to figure out what, the diagnostics didn't reveal anything. So it's just sort of a try, test and see how it goes. So we'll see how this goes. And, cross our fingers and maybe we'll get through the shoot this time. Maybe we won't. This is our first workaround attempt. I also want to mention within the visual, you have some signs over here. 2024 was the last year Water Tiger School was going to work on coordination and event of an annual World Tai Chi and Qigong Day event. We have a committee in place to continue sort of the tradition of our Suffolk County events. And they're going to take over the signs. We have signs for the location of the events and directing people through the park that we normally use, and facilitator signs for each of the facilitators, and some other signs and that sort of thing. So anyway, that's what the sign pile is, waiting for the person who's going to take ownership of them to come and take them off of our hands. So there you go. There's that. Before I talk about this shirt, I need to talk about the last shirt, the one that I wore for the last Qigong video. This is going to be a Tai Chi video this time around. That's where we're at in the shuffle. It was the World Tai Chi and Qigong Day 2017 t-shirt. It was green and purple. And when I announced, the t-shirt thing, because I always do that, I said it was only the second time I'd worn that particular t-shirt. Since all this started back in March of 2020, I was wrong. So, Dui Buqi. My Chinese is always awful. The Chinese have different levels for apology. That was a request for, pardon, more or less. So it's like the third level, second level, sorry. The second level of apology. So I apologize for that. I can safely say this is the first time, well, if this video takes. So it's really the fourth time I've worn this t-shirt in shooting a video, but this might be the first time that it actually ends up being a video. So I got this a while back. It was a gift, so I need to give a shout out to Mike. I did something that he considered was nice for him. And he actually got me 2 t-shirts. So this one, I'll get a little closer just in case you can't read it. So if at first you don't succeed, try doing what your Tai Chi instructor told you to do the first time. The second one, he had the company replace Tai Chi instructor with Lao-Shi, which is the title that I use, and I know it's probably, closer to the pronunciation. Lao-Shi is the proper pronunciation, but anyway, I appreciate the 2 t-shirts. So that's actually the first shout out. So you'll see the other one maybe eventually. So today, as I mentioned, we're going to have a Tai Chi focus. And I have to give another shout out. It's going to be Wu-Wei and Taijiquan. So Wu-Wei is a Taoist principle. And we're sort of doing this because in one of our previous videos, somebody posted a question about how much Water Tiger ties in Daoism to what it is that we teach. And, we've had the Tao After Dark, which is still listed on the website as a possible program at Water Tiger School, but it has been in the dark since the late aughts. But anyway, so I just wanted to give a shout out to, let me read this off the cue card, unnamed individual 8835. So we sort of decided to do a Taoist kind of focus because of his question. And as we have been doing, we're going to start with a warm-up from the first set of Shibashi. Now, if you've been paying attention to us and our series here and using the Shibashi exercises for a warm-up, you'll recognize that we always mention we have seen things online that suggest the actual pronunciation of Shibashi is, let me get this right, Shirbasher. But every time we've ever ran, it's crossed our paths in the past before we added it to our catalog. The person who was instructing always called it Shibashi. And a lot of the online resources also use that particular pronunciation. So that's what we use. So it was, regardless, Lin Hao Sheng created the first set in around 1979. Between then and about 1990, 1991, he created 7 more. So there are actually 8 sets out there, according to his website. But most people do the first set. And the first 3 are actually considered the most popular based on online research. But right now, all we have at Water Tiger School is the first set. And we're going to do Repulse the Monkey in our set, which is, trying to remember which piece it is. It's the 5th exercise in the first set. That should have been on my cue card, but it's not. I don't know why. But anyway, so there you go. I also want to mention that each of the exercises, each of the 18, some people say Shibashi translates as 18 movements, some just say 18, but there are 18 different exercises. Each have their own particular therapeutic quality, but most people do this set just because it's relatively easy to do, it's fun to do, you feel good in doing it, and they do it for overall general wellness and good health. However, what we have been doing is specifically listing what the therapeutic qualities are for the individual exercises, and because they're sort of long and slightly complicated, I'm going back to the cue cards. So 1 works on and stimulates the liver and the gallbladder. The twisting movements unblock and disperse qi in these meridians. 2 relieves shoulder pain, improves muscles and tendons of the shoulder, relieves elbow and wrist fatigue syndrome. No, sorry, elbow and wrist pain and arthritis. I'm reading the cue cards incorrectly. Imagine that. Wait, you don't have to because I'm doing it. Helps to improve chronic fatigue syndrome, asthma, and other conditions related to the lungs. I could use some of that. 3, or actually, no, there's only 2, sorry. So that's, that's what that is. So we'll introduce that. We'll play through it for a little while. Not sure how many repetitions we'll do. It kind of varies, and a lot of times in the individual exercises, I start one with a particular rep count in mind, and then I go beyond. So we just need to be about shoulder wide, and we'll refer to shoulder width a little bit more as this video unfolds. I have my blue lines here. So shoulder width for Water Tiger is sort of where the drop of the shoulder is. Not the outside of the shoulder, not the top of the shoulder, but right where the shoulder drops. You can almost feel sort of the top of the joint there. Should split the heel on that side in half. Same on this side. Toes ideally should be forward and heels back, so the feet are parallel or as close to parallel as possible. If you have a little abduction, then move them in closer so they're a little bit closer to being parallel. If you have an adduction, move them out so they're a little bit closer to being parallel. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. It's kind of chilly in this space, but this is what I'm willing to do for you. Suffer a little bit. So now you can tell I'm abducted. Now you can tell I'm adducted. Now you can tell that I'm mostly parallel. So knees open. We start in the basic place of vertical alignment. I'm going to take a step forward. And pretty much all of this Shibashi has some sort of little sink and rise. It's not very dramatic. One involves a forward fold, so that one's a little bit more dramatic. But most of them are very subtle. And generally, it's an exhale in the sink and an inhale in the rise. And most of these exercises, not all of them, some of them have a little pause, not very long. 2 of them. Flow. And Repulse the Monkey is one of those. By the way, just as in different pronunciations, there are different approaches to the movements, different instruction for the movements, different breath patterns for the movements, for the exercises, and different names. Repulse the Monkey is also known as twisting waist and swing arms. Not really happy with the grammar on that. Should be, if you're twisting waist, you should be swinging arms as opposed to swing arms, but whatever. Changing palms and rolling arms. Clouds rolling in the wind. Always love a good metaphor. Rolling arms. And I'm sure there's more. But for us, it's Repulse the Monkey. And for those of you who have Repulse the Monkey in any of the form plays you do, this might look somewhat familiar. So we're going to start up out of the legs. So high, in a non-marijuana dispensary kind of way. I'm going to throw one hand back. Now I'm going to my right side first. You could go to your left side first. And the other hand is right straight forward. So that's the preparation. That's the transition. And again, that's on an inhale. And as I exhale, I'm going to sink down. Notice how the palms sort of pass next to one another, sort of toward one another, not really next. And I come to an end of the Repulse the Monkey strike here, pushing the palm, settling the wrist. The other hand is drawn back to my hip. And from that point, that's the end of the exhale. I'm going to inhale. The forward hand turns palm up, the backward hand, and I turn my head in the direction the backward hand's going. So my nose is sort of pointing in the general direction of that backhand on the inhale. And then I exhale and sink down and turn the head forward. And both hands should really reach the end of the apex of their extensions or the movements at the same time, and then inhale and up. And then exhale. So this is the twisting movement in the therapeutic quality as described to help sync with the liver and the gallbladder meridians. Exhale down, inhale up. I believe that was 2 pairs, first half of 3. I didn't really announce a number of repetitions. And up. It might be 6 pairs. It might end up being 9. Got a little catch in my throat this afternoon. I apologize. Four. And 4. 5. Turning my head. Look at that hand obliquely over that shoulder as I stand up and inhale and then exhale, sinking down. Coming up. We'll do 3 more after this pair. I think that brings us to 9. Either that or 8. Counting down my last 3 pair, first half of 3. Second half of 3. First half of 2. I don't know if you can hear my shoulder popping or not, so hopefully this is creating the massage as promised in therapeutic qualities. Here's the last one to the first side. Up. Here's the last one to the second side. Up, I lied. Let's do 1 more pair. Because that really did feel like 8, and I'd like to get to 9. I've mentioned this before. And I'm going to come up, and I'm going to turn forward and bring the hands together and sink down. I'll finish that as I've mentioned before, thing in a moment. Now notice palms are floating. We're going to do a standard closing for Water Tiger School. Shibashi has its own way of closing. But when we do these individual exercises, we do sort of a standard closing for Water Tiger School. I'm going to find the left foot. That's the one that empties. The right foot is the one that's going to take the weight. As the hands float up, out, away from the body, as if on top of a beach ball filled with helium, we settle our vertical alignment and structure into the right leg. As the hands draw in, the left foot draws in, the heel's still in the air, because I want to be able to press the heel down as the hands sink down. And notice I'm lengthening here. I could do something else. And then a little rebound pulls the hands into the belly. And there's the fifth of the first set of Shibashi for Water Tiger School that's known as Repulse the Monkey. So by the way, I said that there's, something else could happen at the closing. What I could do is, as the hands float up, out, away from the body, and the foot comes in, to press the foot down instead of lengthening, I could sit down into the body, pressing the heel down, and then rise up into that position. Either's fine. And by the way, I have no idea. I have the feeling probably back in the day, Mesmer Sifu did that at Black Dragon School, and I just picked it up. I mean, it does feel kind of good, but whatever. So there you go, a little bit of Shibashi. So I mentioned Wu-Wei and taijiquan. So what is Wu-Wei? It's usually translated as no action. So for the rest of the video, I'm just going to go over there and sit and do nothing. And by the end of the video, you'll fully understand what Wu-Wei is and how it applies to Tai Chi. I'm kidding. So a lot of times it is voiced as doing nothing, everything is accomplished. However, it doesn't really mean simply, relaxing and falling into laziness, getting on the sofa, kicking your feet up and, watching television or something. What it means in all reality is appropriate action, effortless action. It means being at peace while we're doing something that is about being in motion, about accomplishing something, but being in peace in the midst of that. It's being still in movement. Think of, if part of me moves, all of me moves. If part of me is still, all of me is still. Sort of the more esoteric version of that meaning, as opposed to the physical one that Water Tiger School often focuses upon, is there's always stillness regardless of what you're doing. Doesn't that sort of sound like what we do when we play Tai Chi? And we're going to spend most of this sort of talking about, well, actually all of it, kind of focusing on the physical side of Tai Chi and Wu-Wei. It was interesting when we first set this up to shoot on the 13th, because on the way home from the studio on Thursday night, December 14th, I had a realization because my car yelled at me. We got a 2019 Accord Hybrid, and it's got some really nice driver assist stuff. And sometimes I set up the lane departure to work, and sometimes I don't. However, being who I am and how I drive safely, kind of a little bit more maybe toward a more aggressive style of driving, which isn't really a Tai Chi thing, but it's a Lawrence thing. So sorry about that. But I'm relaxed as I drive. So I have the steering wheel in my hands, but I don't really have a tight grip. Think of how you hold your Tai Chi weapon, right? When you hold a Tai Chi weapon, it's sort of like you're holding a baby bird in your hand. You're not squeezing your hand, right? It's just there. Well, the car yells at me if I do that. My car doesn't like the fact that, somebody lets go of the steering wheel and just allows the driver assist lane departure system to keep you between your lines. It wants you to do that a little bit. So when I drive the Accord and I have the lane departure system on, I have to actually hold the steering wheel with a little bit more grip than I normally would. That is Wu-Wei. That is appropriate action, given the circumstances, right? That's another aspect of it. Given the circumstances of what you're doing, is your action appropriate? Another thing to consider is tension. Tension has to be released before movement can happen. So if you are tense, for instance, I haven't done this particular presentation in public for quite a while, but think if you're walking down the street and somebody's coming your direction, and for whatever reason you perceive them as a threat. Maybe you drop into some sort of fighting stance, whatever that might be for the way that you train, right? So in doing this, I've now created certain activations, right? Would be really easy for me to jump forward and to my left, but back and to the right would be a little bit of an issue. I can do certain things with my left hand and my right hand, but because of this position, I again have limited myself. Plus, maybe, perhaps, if it's a convincing ready position, the person whom you perceived as a threat really wasn't a threat, but because you dropped into this kind of aggressive combat stance, you have now upped the ante. You have escalated a situation that maybe didn't need to be escalated. In our Tai Chi, generally speaking, depending upon, again, your own lineage's approach, this is a ready position. I'm just relaxed. All my limbs are loose. All my joints are open. And I can go forward, back, left, right, whatever I need to do. I am in a state of Wu-Wei, appropriate action. And I don't have to move anywhere if nothing happens. And I can move that way. I can walk by that person. And if I'm aware of what's going on and what they're doing, I don't have to worry about anything. So that's the idea. And that state of relaxation, by the way, the Chinese poets back in the day would actually refer to people who were drunk as an example of manifesting Wu-Wei. They really didn't mean for you to go out and get drunk. What they meant was they used that as an example, is that a drunk person falling off a cart is less likely to injure themselves. And that's one of those things, anecdotally, that comes up with things water tiger. By the way, something that I didn't talk about in the introduction, I know some people get tired of how much we talk in our videos. Now, most of that is about instruction and detail. But this, because it's about Wu-Wei, is going to have a little bit more flavor as some of this unfolds, and some of it has unfolded, as sort of being more of an actual kind of a lecture thing like we did at the very early stages of our YouTube channel back early in 2020, once home lockdown started. But anyway, I've had more than one person over the years that has come to me, and then sometime in their program of study, be it in a public class or the studio, they'll tell me something like, Laoshi, before I met you, I was working in the yard one day and I did something that wasn't very intelligent. It was kind of stupid, and I fell. I mean, I was bruised. I was sore. I had difficulty moving for like days afterwards. He said, you know what? Last week, I was working in the yard. For whatever reason, I did the same stupid thing. I fell. I got right up, dusted myself off, and I was fine. No bruises, no stiffness, no soreness. Everything was fine. Tai Chi did that for those people, made them feel like they were a little bit drunk. Right? So, by the way, if you go back, Facebook Live playlist, Water Tiger for West Babylon, March 31st, 2020. Our primary focus in that particular video is one of our 11, whoops, that's only 6, 11 lottery slips in our Tai Chi lottery called Drunken, where you're playing your Tai Chi with that slight idea of being drunk. Now, to Water Tiger School, all of Tai Chi is a little bit drunken, just sort of a little bit inebriated. But if you want a reference, there you go. So, let's start. We were here before our Shibashi. Feet shoulder wide, as close to parallel as possible, where the drop of the shoulder is, should split the heel in half on both sides. The knees are slightly open. Right? My perineum anchored toward the earth, the Hu Yin, the bottom of the sea. That puts the hips underneath the torso and the torso underneath the shoulders. I'm not doing a pelvic tuck, and my shoulders are not over my glutes. They're over my hips. And I'm not doing this either, with my shoulders over my toes, not over my hips. I'm right here. That anchor toward the earth, the crown point of the head, back third of the skull, held to the heavens, not lifted, right? We're not doing yoga, different kind of structure. The trick with yoga is being able to have that activation and still find relaxation within it, but we're not going to go there. And as I'm standing here, and we've talked about this before, we've made references to Wu-Wei over the last almost 4 years now. Or is it 5? 2020, 2021, 22, 23, 4 years. Math was never my strong point. So anyway, the idea here, and you've probably heard me say this before in this series, or if you've ever been in a water tiger school class, the idea is if like a heavy truck went by outside and it shook, you can't see the insulation in the ceiling above my head. It shook the floor above my head enough that a little piece of insulation or just a speck of dust fell off, floated down, landed on my shoulder. If I made no attempt to adjust to that additional weight, it would be enough to knock me over. For the longest time, I never understood, and I think it's William C.C. Chen would say that he played push hands with the wind. I never really understood that. And then back in the day, Taiji in the Park was an event that Water Tiger hosted for about 17 years on Long Island. And for the first, well, actually 18 years, I think. For the first 16, 17 years, it was in Shorefront Park in the village of Patchogue, which is at the shore, Great South Bay, Patchogue Bay. And there's always wind coming off the water. So if we were doing a standing exercise like this, if we were talking about meditation, if we were talking about doing the breathing set, which is sort of a palate cleanser we do at the end of sessions and the end of most classes, and people were standing there, you could see, they brace themselves against the wind, and wind off the water is usually inconsistent. So it would drop out and they would fall forward. That is not Wu-Wei. That is not pushing hands with the wind. The idea is the breeze hits you, that you're adjusting just for the force of that breeze. And when it drops away, you relax and you stay in position. That is Wu-Wei. And again, that speck of dust, if I made no adjustment, boom, fall to the floor. But I want just enough activation to remain standing in position. Now that movement up and down, in our openings or closings or any time we're doing anything, we want just enough. So this is actually sort of an exercise from back in the day, in my theater days. It's an arm drop exercise. And one of the things I like about the arm drop exercise is just beginning, because it involves two people, and one person has to manipulate the limbs, the upper body, the arms of another person. And generally, in that presentation, somebody's just standing there. I'll say, let your arms hang. It's like, okay, now I'm going to take control of your arm. And I start to reach for their arm, and they do that. They literally lift up their arm to give it to me. And it's like, no, don't do that, right? Let me take control. And it happens like 3 or 4 times before I finally get to that point where I'm able to just, they leave their arm hanging. And you can do this on yourself, obviously, because I'm doing it. And the idea here is that that arm is completely empty. There's no activation in it whatsoever. And if you feel tension, tell them to relax it, sort of sack of sand. A sack of sand, just a sack of sand. My mom would say, like a wet rag hanging off your shoulder, right? But the funny thing is that you might feel like you have it, and then you say, okay, I'm going to let go of your arm now. And that happens. maybe not quite so dramatically. Maybe it's like, and then they relax. But the idea should be, as soon as you let go, it just falls. As soon as you let go, it just falls. Either side just falls. Well, that wasn't very good. There you go. And that's the idea of the arm drop exercise. You can, it's a little bit difficult to do by yourself because, I know exactly when I'm going to let go, right? But if you find something, like I want to find that sense of relaxation, get the elbow open, that sort of thing, let that arm, that hand set on top of the monitor for the recumbent bike here. And I start to move away, and it should fall. But it's a lot easier with two people because then you have that interaction. It's a little push hands like. But the arm drop exercise is a great way. You want to get to that point where you say, okay, right, I'm going to let go of your arm. And I did, well, let me finish the instruction. I'm going to let go of your arm and keep just enough activation to maintain the position. You let go. And it maintains the position. Then it's like, if anything touches it, it should just fall. And that's another time that it's like, okay, just enough activation that, there. But as soon as I touch it, it should fall. And you have that delay. There should be no delay. So boom, it should fall. Just boom, it should fall. Boom, it should fall. Just with that little additional pump. And that's the arm drop exercise. So we've stood. We've talked about the arm drop exercise. We've talked about falling. We brace ourselves when we get ready to fall, right? We don't want to brace ourselves. We want to go with the fall. We want to relax into it. We want to be as if we were drunk, letting go of those inhibitions, letting go of those tendencies to clench. We need to stay relaxed. So our go-to for posture play, usually in these videos, is Water Tiger School's version of Parting the Wild Horse's Mane. So a little introduction to Parting the Wild Horse's Mane. We define shoulder width by where the heels are. So yes, my feet are split in half. They're at my shoulder width, but it's determined by where the heels are, right? So I'm not, even though I probably have about the same distance between my heels forward and back, it's heels side to side. It's not diagonal, it's not horizontal. It's sort of horizontal, but it's the railroad tracks, right? So if I'm going to step into what Water Tiger School considers a left four stance, I'm going to take my right foot and turn it out to somewhere around a 45-degree angle. Now, some people might say, hey, it has to be a 45. We don't. Different people have different things going on in their body. For instance, I've got, I should say 4 screws in my left foot because there are actually 3, but one of them broke a couple of years ago. So I have 4 screws in my left foot and right at the ankle. So it's not always in that position. But I'm going to bring my left foot a little bit closer to you. But not in any, not out any, still at that same shoulder width. So I'm going to turn my hips. Water Tiger School is about, depending upon the posture, hips are square. So my center line, my nose, right straight to the camera. My left hip over to the left side of the room, my right hip over to the right side of the room. Shoulder, left shoulder over to the left side of the room, right shoulder over to the right side of the room. And I got about 60-70% of the weight on my front leg. Now I'm going to turn sideways for a moment. So you can see knee over ankle, safest. Knee over top of the foot, okay for most people if your knee's healthy. Knee over beyond the toes, not good. Knee or toes out, not good. If you have an abduction and you can't get your front toes forward, then you have to adjust your back foot and your stance so you are in an orientation matching your toes instead of being here and turned forward. That puts shearing pressure on your knee. So just be careful here. And when I sit back, notice I sit down into that back leg. I'm not pushing the knee sideways. It's not swinging like an old-fashioned saloon door. I'm sitting down into that back leg. So now I've got, some people will say, this is a 4-6 stance, so 40% of the weight on the front leg, 30% on, or 60% on the back leg, but I'm more like 80-20 here, maybe 90-10. And then I turn forward and I maintain the same height. And I mentioned a left 4 stance for Water Tiger School because some people would consider this a right force stance. Because to get into it, all your weight's in your right foot. You step with the left and then fill it. So the weight started in the right, so it's a right force stance. But for us, it's a left force stance. So that's the lower body in Parting the Wild Horse's Mane. This is actually a really good posture for this particular talk, and we'll get to why in a moment. So for us, for Water Tiger School, the end of posture, the forward hand is palm back, center of palm, right to the center of the chest. The right hand in this instance, and turn sideways so you can see, it's in the front plane of the torso. Fingertips mostly forward, palm down-ish. To get there, I have a ball to my right side. Right hand's the top of the ball, left hand's the bottom. I turn forward. The fingertips move very close together, but they don't really touch. You can, if you've never done it this way before, brush the fingertips together to sort of give you an idea that they're in the right space. And then end, and that's the end of posture. So up here, down, and forward. Rocking back. So we're not going to walk with this today. That's just too much information. We're just going to do this little rock. Back, form the ball, forward, end of posture. Now bring the left foot back, turn the right foot toes forward, turn the left foot out to around a 45. We'll see where that ankle is for me today. Yeah, nope. No 45 for McElroy Larshi. So just feel what that's like, sitting down in the back leg, not swinging the knee sideways. You'll notice because of the movement, your weight is going sort of sideways, but your knee isn't literally swinging sideways without any change in the bend. You're sitting down into that back leg. You're sitting down into the front leg. You're sitting down into the back leg. You're sitting down into the front leg. I'm going to come back. Now the left hand's the top of the ball, right hand's the bottom. I'm going to turn forward, bringing the fingertips close together. I'm going to end that end of posture. Palm back toward the center of the chest. Left hand now dribbling the basketball. And back. Now why is this a good posture for this particular focus? Wu-Wei, appropriate action. So I came to Tai Chi for my own reasons back in the late 80s, early 90s, that were not really related to doing what I'm doing now. I wanted to add Tai Chi to my resume. I wanted to teach theater collegiately. And at the time, Tai Chi was sort of recognized as an alternative approach to movement for the actor classes. So I thought it was a good thing. My mind changed as I was in the room at Black Dragon School, which was actually the dance studio at my university. Another non-traditional grad student rented the space to teach Tai Chi. So one night, Mesmer Sifu partnered me with a senior student and wanted me to work on the basic martial application for Black Dragon School, and hence Water Tiger School, of Parting Wild Horse's Mane. I was like, I don't want to do that. I just want to learn the form, right? I want to get that under my belt. But as we were doing that, the hand that's at the top of the ball, I'm going to go back to my left force stance. The hand that's at the top of the ball is a soft block, right? It's not a hard block. Punch isn't coming in this way. I'm not stopping it. The punch is coming in this way. It's a soft underhand block. And what that hand does is directs that punch down into the side. And the hand that's at the bottom of the ball, as that hand is drawing down and back, is moving in the space between that traversing arm and the person's torso. And I'm coming up into their torso. Now, there are all sorts of things that can happen here. It's sort of a simple backhand strike or push, press, really not a push. Push is striking energy. Or I can carry it and actually bring my knee in as I do that if they're in close, and use it as sort of as a bench to sort of throw them that way. There are other basic martial applications as well. But as we were doing that, it was like, oh, okay. So the punch is coming in. I'm not stopping it. I'm blending with the power of the punch. I'm taking it down, sort of using that energy from that punch to throw it back at my opponent. So I'm redirecting, I'm soft, and I'm using their energy to move forward. It's relaxed. It's borrowing their force, so I don't really have to add force. I just use their force to boomerang it back to them. Wu-Wei. However, as I was doing this, it went from punch to strike to, energy. Energy's coming this way, and I'm finding a way through that to direct that energy back in this way. And the final step was, here comes this problem. Here comes this problem. I'm going to find a way around the problem and to deal with it. I'm going to find a way to redirect the problem, the challenge, and do something to resolve it. At that point in my life, the way I approached a problem was like that. It was banging, literally almost sometimes, banging my head against the wall. Epiphany. I realized that Tai Chi was so much more than just the form, so much more than just the movements. And that's Wu-Wei. Appropriate action. Not fighting, not struggling, but finding a way to flow with what's going on around you. And by the way, that's why we zeroed in on Repulse the Monkey for our warm-up. Same sort of theory. What's happening in Repulse the Monkey is the punch is coming in. I'm an underhand block that then grabs. In this instance, I'm going to pull. But I'm pulling using their force from their punch and my step and turn back, and then sticking out my hand and letting them run into it. It's a little bit more than just sticking out my hand and letting them run into it. There is strike force to that and strike intent. But how simple is that? How relaxed is that? How appropriate that is. I'm not struggling. I don't have to be tense. I just have to redirect and use that energy flowing through me because I'm relaxed. Tension somewhere within that pattern will block the energy. And that, in a nutshell, is Wu-Wei and Tai Chi. So I hope that was interesting. I know a lot of words, a lot of words. So sort of a little bit of more luxury than usual. When we come back, hopefully in 3 weeks, we'll be back into a Qigong focus. Another piece from the 8 Pieces Brocade. Not really sure which one yet. And I think we do 6 different versions of different people's approaches, sort of, strength in variety of the approaches. So that's sort of that idea. And then we'll be back to Tai Chi again in another 3 weeks. We hope to, if this holds, we've thus far, I hate to say anything out loud, gotten through both the points, the early point and the later point, where this crashed and burned on December 13th. So maybe we found the issue that we had back then. So anyway, there you go. Wu-Wei and Tai Chi. I hope you found this interesting, hopefully a little entertaining. Keep in mind, World Tai Chi Day this year is Saturday, April 26th. We should be at, I almost said Shorefront Park, Diamond in the Pines on Long Island, provided the committee who's taking Water Tiger School's place gets that particular location without any issues. I'm still sort of serving as an outside consultant for their work moving forward. So anyway, so there's that. By the way, we're shooting this a couple of days after the New Year, so Happy New Year 1. We leave the Year of the Wood Dragon at the end of this month. I believe it's the 29th, and move into the Year of the Wood Snake. So most people say Gong Hoi Fat Choi, so I'll just wish you peace and prosperity for that one, though there might be another video before then. So as always, We do, make the point of choosing to preview all of our comments, not because we want to screen out the negative ones, though if you flame us, that's going to go away. But because if we don't, then certain marketing for, shall we say, dates, and I don't mean the fruit, show up in our feed, so we don't like that. And we also post a link to the videos on our Facebook page, which is a little bit more sort of free range. But again, if you flame us there, you're not going to be able to access the page anymore. But constructive criticism, questions like unnamed individual 8835 through our direction, always appropriate. Plus, what you would like to see from Water Tiger School. We do these deep drills into stuff. Usually a lot less lecture-y than today was, but still, that's what we do. You can, if you want to just find somebody out there who says, I'm going to present Wu-Wei and Tai Chi, and then just moves for 45 minutes or something, then go find them. But we're not them. So thank you. I hope the end of year season served you well, and the beginning of year is starting on the right foot or the left foot, whichever one it needs to be, appropriate action. And you'll catch us next time.